This episode is brought to you by Amazon Ads. Every good storyteller knows there is no story without an audience. Amazon Ads can help tell your brand story to audiences who are leaned in and ready to hear what you have to say. All on Freevee, Twitch, Amazon Music, Thursday Night Football, exclusively on Prime Video and more. Learn more at advertising.amazon.com.
Blue Wire.
First pick in the 1991 NBA Draft, the Charlotte Hornets select Larry Johnson from University.
I'm not supposed to be here, man. A lot of people from where I'm from, don't make it.
Charlotte, we're back.
Welcome back to another episode of the Buzz Beat podcast. This is Lee. I'm with Brian, and we are coming to you today with another edition of our kind of throughout the season NBA prospect pods that we'll be sprinkling in. Obviously, our audience and listeners know this is a majority Charlotte Hornets podcast, but me and Brian are going to sprinkle in some NBA prospect pods throughout the year. Not only because it's fun and we like to do it, but also because it does inform some conversation around the Hornets, particularly this year and potentially a pivot year for the Hornets and what prospects they may or may not be targeting in next year's draft. Today, we are going to recap two games between the G League Ignite and between the Metro 92 from the French Pro League that has potentially a generational prospect in Victor Wembanyama. Me and Brian will probably go back and forth on that a little bit as well. Just a couple housekeeping notes. We have had two preseason reaction pods from the Charlotte Hornets games that you can find in the feed. And of course, if you want to get that feed quicker, earlier, bonus episodes, quicker releases, premium content, all that good stuff, check out BuzzBeat Plus, which is a subscription model to the podcast that gives you some perks and early releases. Brian, how are you, man? We've got some fun prospect talk and banter to have. Are you ready?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. I hope everything is good in your world. And yeah, I'm pretty excited to be doing this. You know, like you said, Lee, we've done a couple of these draft pods, including one on Scoot Henderson back in early September. We did a couple other ones that focused on not one and done guys in college ball this year, but some of the top returners. So we talked about Maxwell Lewis, Terquavion Smith, and I think all of those were good content and they were relevant. But I do recognize that there's maybe there could be a little bit more interest in this one and a little more relevancy, just given the or relevance, I should say, just given the timing. And look, you and I had been planning to do a Victor pod for a while now. Part of me kind of wishes we had gotten one out, just before this thing in Vegas. But I think it's worth actually now debriefing on the backside, because what we saw this week in Las Vegas was pretty special, and I think in a lot of ways a sign of things to come. To see the projected number 1 and number 2 picks going at one another, backdropped by the setting of Las Vegas and an early start for the second game, so an international French audience could see Victor play. People in his home country could see him do his thing. All the attention it got, the buzz on social media. I know my timeline is slanted towards basketball and towards the draft, but it was just like inundated that night.
Yeah,
of the first game at least, and I just thought it was pretty spectacular. And my guess would be, look, not every year that you get two prospects like Scoot and Victor. And I know we don't want to think about this draft as just a 2-player draft. Like, they're the headliners, but
it's deep.
And Amon Thompson is a really, really impressive prospect that I think has, I have slotted at number 3 right now, and I think he's quite special as well. But I do think you're going to start to see these types of highlight featured games more. And maybe it won't every year. It's not going to be quite as good as this, but just seeing what they did, how it worked, I think was pretty awesome. So I'm thrilled to be here and thrilled to be talking about these two guys, specifically Wembanyama, who's someone that's been on radars for a while now. I mean, years. And I got my first taste of him, real taste of him last summer, the summer of 2021 during the U19 FIBA World Cup.
That's right.
When he played for France, and he was incredible in that event as one of the younger guys in that event. But saw France play several times in that event, including the gold medal game against Team USA. And what is going to, I think, end up going down as like a potentially historical Team USA roster. Jaden Ivey,
Loaded.
Holmgren, Kennedy Chandler, Johnny Davis, Harrison Ingram. I'm leaving out
Patrick Baldwin Jr.,
who we did a pod on before the 2022 draft. So there was some incredible talent on that Team USA roster, and Wembanyama, though, when they played, was the best player on the court. So, and he's different, man. Like he has gotten that those events were 15 months ago. And I mean, he has progressed rapidly. And so we're going to discuss where he's at now. And I think some of the stuff that has transpired since that event and the last year and change of Victor's pro career. But yeah, let's go ahead and get into it.
Yeah, well, and just to set the table quickly, for if there is kind of obviously our audience is Hornet centric that may or may not, pay close attention to kind of draft prospects. I do think this is worth your time. Just to set the table here, G League Ignite in their third season, obviously. Scoot was on the G League Ignite last year, but was in more of kind of a backup role with Jaden Hardy and Dyson Daniels and some of these guys that are in the NBA this year. Obviously, the G League Ignite have had, they've had Jalen Green, they've had Kuminga, they've had Dyson Daniels. This year, Scoot is like the man on the G League Ignite. He is totally driving the ship. And they played Metro 92, which is a French Pro League team, which features Victor Wembanyama. And you alluded to this, Brian, but props to the NBA and props to the French Pro League for coming together and making this happen. Because like you said, it is a pretty kind of unique thing to see the consensus number one prospect in Victor and the consensus number two prospect in Scoot get to go head to head in an awesome environment, like you said. But let's cover Victor just right off the top, because we did have a prospect pod on Scoot where we covered him for 45 minutes. I think it's worth talking about him again today, because as we talked about in that prospect pod, he was going to be in a different, more featured role this year, and he is, and that was evident from the get-go in the first half of that first game on Tuesday. But let's talk about Wemby. If you live under a rock, Victor Wembanyama is 7'4", 7'3", 7'4", somewhere in there.
At least.
Absolute. I know this is an overused phrase, but he truly is a unicorn. If you remember kind of the first moments of Porzingis being in the NBA, where everyone was just kind of what is this? What is this floor stretching, rim protecting, 7'2", gangly, coordinated freak? That is Victor, but on a grander scale. The physical dimensions that pop off the screen are even more jarring and almost CGI looking, the way he covers the floor. I think just from a high level, I'll make a couple quick observations and then kick it to you, Brian, for kind of your thoughts on him, specific or not. Just kind of dive into what you've got on him. But again, 7'4", generational prospect that moves like he's a 6'6" wing. When he handles the ball, when he brings the ball up the floor, the way he shoots, I think his shooting, you alluded to this, I think his shooting has improved in just the 15 months since we saw him in FIBA last summer. He can do really a little bit of everything. And I think the one point I wanted to make before I kick it to you is the shooting is really just gravy on top of what this guy does. I think that was the shooting was really kind of highlighted on the social media buzz and the Twitter conversation around these two games, because he did have 37 and 36 points. He hit 7 threes in the first game, which is incredible and ridiculous for a prospect of his age and size. But like, it's the rim protection. It's the way he moves. It's his willingness to kind of, have a post game, to roll in the pick and roll and finish around the rim with like spins and creative finishes and Euro steps. Like, this dude is not just a kind of finesse skilled big. Like, yes, he's skinny. Yes, he gets knocked around a bit. Yes, he's a little goofy looking, but like, he plays with kind of a certain edge and toughness that I think was even a little surprising to me. And I'm just like, my God. I mean, so go ahead, Brian. Just take it away.
Yeah, you mentioned a bunch of good things there. One is the way he moves. It's just incredibly fluid for a player that age and that size. Like, that is uncommon. That truly does seem to be unique, even if you try hard to find some of these other historical or of more recent vintage analogs for him.
Right.
But you mentioned, I think Porzingis is one of those types, though. I think Wembanyama's, as I think we would both agree, his ceiling far exceeds that.
Well, the handle
alone. And you can see too, like the way his handle, I would say, is pretty damn impressive for someone that size. Like, obviously, like it can be a little wonky just because of his size and because guys are really challenging him. Like, you can see smaller players trying to be like, all right, let's see what you got.
Yeah.
And try to get the ball away from him. And he's really, really good at not kind of like being knocked off of his axis. Like, I think he does need to get better finishing through contact. I think that'll come with time. But his the turnovers that he has, I feel like when he's like initiating offense or in some sort of self-creation mode, often those they come out of when he's being a little aimless, and he'll just sort of like drive into nowhere and throw a bad pass or throw a late pass or whatever. It's not just guys bulldozing him and ripping the ball from him. Like, it's not like if you've been watching the Hornets in preseason, it's not what's happening to James Bouknight,
right.
Where he's just getting guys are coming up and just taking his lunch money from him. And that is in part because Wembanyama, despite the incredible size and length, like, he is the bend, the flexibility that he has is kind of unbelievable. I would say if anyone pulls up his highlights, or if you pull up highlights from these two games out in Vegas, keep an eye on where that guy's shoulders are when he drives. Because when he's standing at full height, it's jarring how tall he is, even on the floor that's filled with other,
massive,
unbelievably tall people. Like, he stands out in terms of his size, but he's able to contract his body and do it while he's moving. And he's got the ability to not just drive in a straight line. If anything, it'd be kind of nice if he got like maybe a little more assertive in a straight line, but he's got crossovers into step backs. He's got spins into fadeaway jumpers. He busted out like a Euro step finish in the second game out in Vegas. So he's got like a bunch of these little tricks. And that's why I think ultimately he's going to be like an incredible finisher. He's already sort of like tantalizing you with the shot making and the shot versatility and the touch. But I would add too, just specifically to the movement stuff, the thought I had while watching him play is the way he moves coming off of down screens as someone that size, or flowing into handoffs, or being like the trailer on a break or secondary action. He is moving and shooting off those looks like where even if he was a foot shorter, even if he was 6'4", 6'5".
Oh, totally.
You would still say this is like pretty impressed lower body movement in touch from an 18-year-old prospect or whatever. Like that's truly something I believe. I think we did a pod on Malachi Branham a couple of months ago, talking about his screen usage and movement shooting skills and how advanced that stuff was for a freshman in college. Well, Victor is younger than that and a foot taller than that, and his movement skills are so impressive. The ability to square his lower body, to square his shoulders, to shoot fluidly off movement. It's kind of jarring, and I don't know. I mean, I think this 2-game sample may warp a little bit what our expectations for him as a shooter are, and I'd actually kind of be curious to know,
it's a great point.
Long term, where you think he ends up as a shooter. In my head, I've kind of thought of a couple of different like big man shooter tiers, and we can kind of get into that. But just focusing specifically on the movement for right now, it's jarring. And then defensively,
oh man,
the ground coverage is incredible. I think the first sort of like highlight play he had in the first game against Ignite was G League Ignite ran flex action, and Wembanyama was guarding someone in the high post at like the left side elbow, and Scoot Henderson set the baseline flex screen for City Sissoko, who is another first round prospect. I don't think City had a great showing in Vegas, though I think there were some good moments. But so I mean, City's getting ready to go up for what should normally be a quick finish along the baseline coming off the flex cut, and Wembanyama just soared in from seemingly it must have been out of nowhere for him. But he basically, I was watching on my computer, and he comes from the left side of the screen to the right side of the screen to just absolutely delete the shot. And so the ground coverage is truly, truly, truly amazing. And you can see him really going for stuff. And I think maybe that pulls him into some bad gambles. And therefore, like some of the closeout one-on-one defense on space is a little porous at times. But I think part of that is just because like the aggression is at a good level, and like he's trying to do stuff. And I think really sort of like testing some of the outer bounds of where he's at physically right now, which I think is also very, very, very impressive. And then the last thing I want to say about his movement and his size that is just so, to me, it seems so uncommon. I think there were some very good moments in pick and roll defense. I think there were some less than stellar moments in pick and roll defense. But the possessions that just blew my mind weren't the ones where he switches out to someone that's a foot shorter than him and shows the ability to like get in a stance and slide or whatever. It was like with Victor in these games, you could see him. He was almost playing like it was kind of drop, but kind of to the level of the screen too. He's so big that he almost. We talk all the time on this pod about scheme versatility. I think this guy's going to give you incredible scheme versatility if you're using him as a screen defender. It probably would be tempting for a coach to use him in the Rob Williams, floater role and just have him, guard a shooter and just, protect the rim and put out fires all over the court. But if he is your screen defender, his ability to alter shots that are like jump shots, where you're like, okay, you could see, John Jenkins will come off a screen and like step back a little bit and get ready to take a three, and being like, no, he's in drop, or he's like a step or two below the screen. Like, I got this. I got time and space. And his ability to alter those shots to get from decent position guarding the screen all the way to, wow, is he about to block this shot? Is he about to block this 26-foot jump shot? And you could see if he didn't block it, you could see these guys that like a shooter like Jenkins or Leonard Miller or any of these other Mojave King, any of these other wings and guards that were taking perimeter jump shots for G League Ignite. You could see them having to recalibrate their shots as they're like in mid shooting motion, simply because Wembanyama, with his length and his reaction time, is able to get out, contest shots in a way that I really do think is pretty uncommon. And so you could just see him altering shots and contesting shots in ways that were different all over the court. And so that was the last thing I'd like to get in on terms of Wemby's movements.
That's exactly right. Like I have the rim protection stuff starred, circled, highlighted. Like I think in the modern NBA context, like obviously we've learned how important rim protection is. I mean, you think about a team that we cover, the Charlotte Hornets, who have kind of just sorely lacked elite rim protection for years now. And that, of course, among other reasons, but is a chief factor on why the Hornets have underperformed as a defensive unit over the past like half decade. Like there's just been a complete void of that. And Wembanyama, like, Brian, I think you make an excellent point. I do think there are going to be some warped shooting expectations after this performance, particularly because of that second half performance in game one. And like, there's two sides of the coin on that for me. Yes, I think because of what he did in that second half, there's going to be a little bit of outsized expectations on him as just like an elite shooter. But on the other side of the coin on that, another thing I took away from that is he had a really good kind of game feel that he needed to take over scoring a little bit to get Metro 92 back in that ballgame. I mean, they were down like 22 at one point in that first half, early second half, and he brought them all the way back within like 2 points at a certain juncture in that second half with his shooting and scoring. So I thought that was kind of a cool attribute to see from such a young kid to say, I'm the guy that's going to have to get us back in this ballgame, even though it's an exhibition. Like you could tell him and Scoot really cared about this. I mean, they like particularly Scoot, who was just incredibly fired up in that first half and should have been. I mean, he was awesome.
It added to the overall spark of this game.
Yes.
Not only did those guys play, you're hoping they play pretty well. You're hoping you get a couple highlight sequences. You're hoping some of those sequences overlap, right? When you and I talked about this game happening back in September, both of us were sort of like, hey, fingers crossed we get a couple interactions between Wembanyama and Scoot on the court. Now, unfortunately, in the second game, one of those interactions early on caused the injury, and that's why Scoot only played 5 minutes in that game. Luckily, it doesn't seem like it's serious. But in game one, the fireworks of those two guys going at one another. I mean, Scoot got the one finish that Scoot had in the first half where he inside hand finish where he crossed over two guys on the perimeter, got downhill, and then used the rim to shield off Wembanyama and finish. But then Victor gets him back later on, blocking him with his left hand, which again, I know I said I was done talking about Victor's movements, but like the coordination to use your offhand to block that rocket as it's coming to the rim is just, again, add it to the list of things that are just amazing in terms of Victor's package of size, length, increasing strength, coordination, and plenty of other tools too.
Champions aren't born, they're made. And the secret to make your business reign supreme? Shopify, the all-in-one commerce platform to start, run, and grow your business. Forget the off-season work, Shopify makes it simple to sell to anyone from anywhere. Whether you're selling warm-ups or wall hangers, it's time to start selling with Shopify and join the platform simplifying commerce for millions of businesses worldwide. With Shopify, you'll customize your online store to your brand, discover new customers, and build the relationships that create die-hard fans. Shopify fields all the sales channels to grow a winning business, from an in-person POS system to an all-in-one e-commerce platform, even across social media platforms like TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram. Shopify is the secret to becoming a business champion by making it simple for anyone to sell their products anywhere, taking the guesswork out of selling. When you're ready to take your winning idea to the world, team up with Shopify, the commerce platform powering millions of businesses down the street and around the globe. Sign up for a free trial at shopify.com/Blue Wire, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/Blue Wire to start selling online today. Shopify.com/Blue Wire.
Every deep playoff run starts with building an amazing team. Doing the same for your business doesn't take a room full of scouts. You just need Indeed. Don't spend hours on multiple job sites looking for candidates with the right skills when you can do it all with Indeed. Hate waiting? Indeed's US data shows over 80% of Indeed employers find quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed matches their job description the moment they sponsor a job. Something I love about Indeed is that it makes hiring all in one place so easy because with virtual interviews, Indeed saves you time. You can message, schedule, and interview top talent all in one place. Indeed knows that when you're growing your business, you have to make every dollar count. That's why when you sponsor a job, you only pay for quality applications from resumes in our database matching your job description. Visit Indeed.com/Blue Wire to start hiring today. Just go to Indeed.com/Blue Wire. That's Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Terms and conditions apply. Cost per application pricing not available for everyone. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
And that's such a small thing, but for, kind of the casual basketball observer, it may not be that up. But like, even some of the best shot blockers in the NBA are almost all primary, like dominant hand shot blockers. Like that's a rare quality to have. And for him to flash that against another elite prospect who, like, by the way, his best attribute is probably as like a slash rim finisher type. Yeah. Like that's crazy. So the shooting stuff is really interesting, I think, because obviously he's going to need to shoot threes. He already is an effective three-point shooter to some degree. I think to what degree is still kind of out there. Like if you had to put his over-under in a full like rookie NBA season of what he would shoot from three, I feel like it would be like mid-30s, maybe 34%, something like, and maybe I'm underestimating. Like it's possible I'm underestimating that. It's possible he comes out of the gate as like a 38% three-point shooter. I would put it slightly lower than that. The only counterpoint I think to that would be that like he is already a really good free throw shooter. Yeah. And the motion and the finish, the high release, I mean, it all looks pretty damn good.
It is going to be fascinating. Like, I agree with you on those sort of like, kind of rough 3-point shooting percentage projections, right? Because what I will say is, the volume is going to be there. Not just because he shot it a ton in these two games in Vegas. You said in the first game, 7 of 11 from deep, and in the second game, 2 of 7. So, 18 3-point attempts across 2 games. He also got to the line a ton. 28 free throw attempts in these 2 games, which is impressive. But he has had the 3-point volume across his early professional career. We saw him also do it with France in the FIBA World Cup U19 last summer as well. But the reason why I don't think the percentage would like jump off the page is because he's just going to take tough attempts. Like he's also going to take. There's going to be some self-created shots he takes. Like he can do pick and roll, pull up threes. He can do isolation step back. He can do, catch, one dribble step back, space creation into I guess sort of a one dribble off dribble 3. But the movement shooting coming off down screens, the DHOs, the trailers. I think there's going to be a degree of difficulty where
it's a good point.
Those are tougher shots. And I think if he limited it to just pick and pops, it's like, which will be open and him shooting against, rotating coverages and stuff like that. I could see the volume goes down, but then the efficiency would go up a little bit.
Sure.
But, right now we want to see the full outward bounds of what he's capable as a shooter. And so I was thinking about this, like, long term, it's so rare to project someone into like the Dirk or Towns, Karl Anthony Towns range.
Like the 2 greatest shooting big men of all time.
Exactly. But it's like, and I even think, like, I've even seen people, including John Gavoni at ESPN, like running with like the Durant comp. I think Durant is so uncommon. I get like anxiety thinking about comping someone to him because it's just, the man is truly an offensive unicorn.
But Brian, the 3 guys I had written down were KD, Porzingis, and AD. Yes. And none of them are perfect, but there's like elements of it,
Yes, exactly. So that is you brought up the other names I wanted to mention, which was like, I think there's another tier, which is like the Porzingis, maybe Jokic tier
Yeah.
Like very good shooters with some versatility. And Victor, I would say, like has the ceiling and has shown the skills to have even more versatility shooting off the move and shooting off his own self-creation attempts from varying distances. And he has incredible range on the jumper. And like, he'll need to get stronger to really improve that. But like, I mean, big time NBA shooting range off the dribble and off the catch. But if he can end up in the, in terms of Jokic, Porzingis, that category, then he's going to, I mean, the sky is the limit for him. I think if he ends up in like the AD territory where, Davis up and down, and every season it has to be, a commentary on where's the jump shot going to be. And the only time it's ever looked like really, really good from multiple levels was the bubble, you know? And so I kind of think of that as like maybe the floor, which is saying something for Victor.
Totally.
But even if it's somehow cratered below that, there's still so much other stuff he's doing. And I don't think it's going to. Like, I think he's going to end up being a pretty damn good shooter. But
the rim protection alone is just that valuable. It truly is.
Yes. It's the rim protection, the movement defensively, what he can do everywhere. Deterring shots at the rim, altering 3-point attempts, closing the rim down. Yeah, it's pretty wild. So do you have any other Victor shooting thoughts?
So the only thing I think I would expand on a little bit, you kind of alluded to it, like he doesn't have the technical mastery and like, I don't even know how to explain it, but like whatever KD has offensively, like just the entire bag, he doesn't quite have that. And I don't think he will. And although I do think honestly, like, from a high level, I think KD actually is kind of underrated as a rim protector. Yes. Wembanyama is just he's in a different stratosphere as a prospect rim protector. So I guess I would just reiterate the point that it's like there literally is no perfect comp, but there's elements of those guys, not quite as much kind of like individual isolation creation, I think, that KD has, and then just like the technical massive bag of like different ways to get his shot off that KD has. I don't think it'll ever be that.
Yeah.
But then you flip to AD and it's like AD at Kentucky was like this generational rim protection prospect. And I think Wembanyama is a kind of like one step above even what KD was as a freshman.
Yeah.
And then the only other thing I would say, Brian, like not to pour cold water on this by any means, because I think from my like reaction and analyzation, you can tell how incredibly excited I am about this. But I don't know if I'm quite like, I would put him in the same kind of prospect category as Zion, LBJ, AD, KD. I don't know if I'm quite ready to be like the guy of the last 40 years.
Yeah.
And maybe in a month I will. I just think it's fair to say like he's in that group kind of already, which almost seems insane to say, but I think he is. I just don't think he's like clearly the best. Would you agree with that, or do you think it already is?
No, I'm with you. In part because I just think there's some like recency bias with that. Like,
right.
We it's hard to remember. It's hard to even remember like Zion in 2019. Now it's not for me because like I lived it and it was incredible. And yeah, the entire league was like angling to get that guy, or a third of the league was angling to get Zion. And so I mean, like a similar thing's about to happen with Victor. But yeah, he's in that category where you're the analogs are like Kareem, LeBron, AD,
Ralph Sampson,
Zion. But yes, I just don't think it's so subjective. And again, I do think there's a good bit of recency bias with it as well. So I would say he's in that category for sure. And I mean, I would say like, I don't think Scoot is quite in that category, but man, obviously like he's going to have a big chunk of the league super duper excited for sort of like the 2023 draft.
Which is like a great transition because I think we should hit on Scoot really quick. We've got the full prospect pod on Scoot, so we don't necessarily need to go as deep on him as Victor. I just have 3 things I want to say about Scoot, and then I'll jump it to you to either add observations or kind of dovetail off what I'm going to say. So 3 things about Scoot. Number 1, we talked about it on our prospect pod for Scoot. With Jaden Hardy and Dyson Daniels gone, he is the absolute man on this team. He is like super high usage, bunch of pick and rolls, has the ball in his hand every single possession. And we were hoping it would be as awesome as it was. Like, just incredibly explosive, incredible sense of when to pull up, when to attack, all these kind of shifty maneuvers to get around defenders. You already hit on probably what has been the most probably shared play where he had this, this kind of traditional crossover to this like opposite hand kind of crazy wraparound around the legs that got him between 2 defenders, the Euro step to finish around Wembanyama, which was just electric. He is everything I would hoped he would be in this featured role, just incredibly dynamic, explosive at his size and strength. The second thing I would say is I think to your credit, Brian, I think you were ahead on this a little bit. I was still like a little hesitant and pensive about what his pairing would look like with a LaMelo Ball. Mm-hmm. And I think like any of my worries are completely dissipated. Like, is he quite the catch and shoot guy you would want him to be right away? Maybe not, but I don't even think it matters because he's just so dynamic everywhere else. Like, that would be an incredible backcourt. Incredible. One can wish. And then the last thing I would say before I turn it over to you would be in my notes. And I think I saw some people kind of having a opposite opinion on me on this one and would happily take any pushback if you had some different observations. But I did think he was pretty poor at the point of attack in that first game. Like, I thought he got blown by a ton. I thought he kind of melted on ball screens. The not even excuse, just like the counterpoint, I think, to what I'm saying would be his usage was so high and he was creating everything on the offensive end that it's hard to expect him to be like Davion Mitchell on the ball or something. But in my notes, I literally have kind of horrific at point of attack, completely electric everywhere else.
Yeah, I would say strictly to that. I'm actually with you. I thought the point of attack defense was like not great. I mean, to be clear, it was not like at the top of the list of things where I was sort of like awed by what he was doing offensively. And you spoke to the explosion and the usage. I do think as far as the pick and roll defense goes, I just thought like Ignite's coverages, and to be clear, like these were their first 2 games they've played this season. These guys there's not a ton of continuity on this roster. I thought the pick and roll defense was just like disjointed in general, like what the screen defenders, like what Leonard Miller and F.A. Abogidi were doing guarding ball screens. I mean, you could see like a lot of like hard hedges, a lot of like blitzes, traps, like that type of stuff. And I just thought the communication in terms of how long does the screen defender stick with the ball handler to let Scoot get back?
That's a good point.
Versus until those guys need to get recovered to their guy. I thought that was bad, but that's going to get better as the season goes along. And as that sort of rounds into form, I think that's going to give us a more like cleaner setting to evaluate Scoot's point of attack defense. But look, even if he ends up being a bad point of attack defender, which I don't think he will, because the quick hands, which we saw on display that he has, the size for like a lead guard, the strength that is continuing to develop in the athleticism. I think he has the chance to be
that breakaway dunk.
Yeah, incredible. And where he takes off from is insane. Yeah. But even if that isn't, even if he hits the lowest ends of his projections in terms of point of attack defense, like obviously everything he's giving you offensively is going to be more than enough to say, well, we'll just put him on this secondary guy or this spot up guy, and we're totally fine with it. Yes. Some of the other thoughts I had about Scoot, and I won't, because I mirror your thoughts in terms of a lot of the the offensive discussion points. I won't repeat those. I would just say, as far as Scoot goes as like an off-ball guy, I do think he's going to end up becoming a pretty good spot-up shooter and shoot off the catch. Like I do feel pretty good about that. However, his ability to move without the basketball, which is something we talked about on the Scoot pod, not just certainly his ability to like cut, in which he is a violent downhill cutter that can use that to create a pressure point on the rim for his own finishes. But there was another time he got backdoor on a cut in the first game. Wembanyama was forced to crash down and stop him at the rim, and he kicked it right out to, I believe it was Leonard Miller in the corner for a wide open 3-point attempt, which is just like, that guy's going to spend the next 12 to 15 years of his life just creating all kinds of open corner threes. And
man, he can pass too. I was really impressed.
I think the passing looked, I was already pretty bullish on Scoot as a passer, but I thought there were some meaningful examples that showed his progression, even within the span of just, one off season. I think sort of a more comprehensive understanding of where everyone is on the floor. So those court mapping skills, I think, were better. I think you'll start to see more and more like skips and kick out passes, not just, oh, I forced the defense to bend because I touched the paint. I get to lob it to the guy who's open in the dunker spot, or I get to kick it to the guy who's open for 3, which like that's enough. But I think you're going to start to see more of they're rotating like this on the backside. This person doesn't look open, but they're open in the corner. Let me skip it. I think there's going to be more of those types of multi-layered reads that you're going to start to see from Scoot as the game continues to slow down. And I would say to that end, his patience in the pick and roll is incredible. You see some NBA ball handlers. I think this is something that even LaMelo has had to work on, just becoming more patient. Waiting for your teammate, the guy who set the screen, to roll in to get downhill, to take that extra dribble, that extra half second to let this defender move there so your teammate can cut there, or your teammate can relocate there, or your teammate can dive there, and just threading the pocket pass. I thought he had a couple really, really nice pocket passes to guys diving to the rim in the first game, but I just thought his patience and his understanding, while not perfect, are really, really high for a player his age. And if you pair that with his athleticism, it's insane. And his ability to start and stop, like this guy can go 0 to 100, but then 100 to 0, then back up to 100, then down to 15, then down to 95. Like it's crazy. And he had a possession when Victor and Scoot really started like just trading. I mean, seriously, like haymakers with one another late in that game. The one possession, I believe it was pick and roll. He got downhill. He turned the corner. He had 2 guys on him, including Victor, who you could tell at that point, those guys were like kind of going at one another a little bit. Which was awesome to see.
The back-to-back threes and stuff like that.
The Scoot hitting the brakes and letting those 2 guys fly by. He kind of gave him like a little, he stopped and gave him like a little shoulder fake. Those guys go flying by. All of a sudden, he's just wide open at the rim for a finish. I mean, that was some, I know Luka doesn't move that fast, but we talk all the time about Luka's ability to decelerate.
Totally.
And that was just incredible deceleration skills, body control, and understanding. Because again, it's his patience while stuff is flying all around him as both a passer and a finisher. I was super impressed from Scoot. But I did want to say just a couple more quick things about Victor, just real quickly. I should have gotten these in earlier. But I think one of my favorite things with him, and I saw this only a couple of times, but because of his size, I love when there are moments where he's the screener on offense, and you see him either pop into space for a pick and pop 3, or he'll kind of like drift short roll style inside the arc, and the ball gets swung to him. Like, let's say 2 defenders are on the ball in the pick and roll. Victor pops open into space on the weak side wing. It is hilarious when the off-ball stunt or closeout rotates at him. So like he catches it, he's open for a pick and pop 3. the weak side help defender is sliding over to contest the shot, or at least to hopefully bother the shot. And that's good defense. Like, that's what you're supposed to do. It's supposed to be able to at least give a step or two in the direction of the guy, if not a full closeout, to let the screen defender, the big man, your teammate, get back to, in this case, Victor Wembanyama. But there was one possession in the first, I think it was the first game, where Victor popped. He caught the ball on the left wing. Mojave King, who I by the way, I thought had a nice.
I had him marked in my notes. I thought he looked really good.
I really liked the pin down shooting and playmaking that he had in this game. But I mean, he closes out on him, and Victor's just not even seeing him.
Right. It's not even a thought.
He's just not even seeing this uber athletic guy.
Like 6'6" wing.
Yeah. Just like the gold state, like the ideal sized wing, like rotating at him. In King, like, it was a full closeout, basically. It wasn't just like a stunt. But like, he's just not seeing that. And again, his ability to just shoot over it's both the ability to dunk on Leonard Miller at the rim with ease, but also his ability to just like shoot over the top of guys. These just very standardized coverages that are not going to work against him. And then the other version of that is when he pops sort of like closer into tighter windows of space. So it's kind of a pop, it's kind of a short roll. But there was another time where like he caught the ball at the elbow on a short roll, or like nail elbow area. And there was a guy in the strong side corner when he caught it. And there were two defenders from the Ignite that were like in position. Like, one dude rotated up to catch him at the elbow, and there was someone that was there to like stop the cutter coming in from the corner. And so Victor, who I think in terms of processing, like, isn't quite there. Like, there's still like a little bit of slowness and lag, though I think the vision and willingness to pass is quite good. But he can just see, like, the coverage is literally in place. Like, there's a guy marking him. There's a hat on a hat, right? Like, there's a dude guarding him. There's a dude guarding the guy he's trying to throw the ball to. But he can just see and pass over the top. It was just another instance of like, there's another very large human being guarding him, but they may as well be a traffic cone. You know what I mean? Like, just going to be able to pass right over the top. It's so uncommon. And then I would say, as far as the post game goes, it's not quite there yet. Like, at least in terms of like static, more like deliberate, slow post touches. However, he's definitely willing to try stuff, and his ability to isolate in the mid-post area and use a combination of face-up into back-down moves or spinning and fading away baseline. He's not quite there with the left hand. He's pretty reliant on his right hand for finishing. You could see that when he would spin left or get downhill to his left hand. And he doesn't quite have enough upper body strength to like bully guys one-on-one, despite the length advantage that he has. And I just think like added strength, which again, he's clearly gotten bigger and stronger since last summer, is going to help with those sort of like one-on-one half court possessions. But I also think this guy, because of his mobility, is going to be a guy that's going to be able to eat in like early offense seals where he just catches a cross match and all of a sudden it's a 6'3" guy trying to stop. I mean, like, Giannis style. And he's going to be in just, he has the mobility, the foot speed, the footwork, like all the coordination, all the touch to do all of that stuff. But when he has the ability to just simply like overpower more guys, he's going to get so many rim finishes and free throw attempts because of that stuff. I can't wait to see him get better in that regard. And just the last thing I would say is it's cool to see him getting the opportunity to initiate offense and to initiate in space. I don't think it's airtight yet, but him getting this opportunity with Met 92 was predicated on him getting more on-ball reps. I think those are really, really good for him. And while I don't necessarily see him at this stage maybe being like a primary creator or whatever, I don't think that's like out of the question. And I think you're still going to get like a lot of offensive creation and obviously a ton of usage. Basically, I just don't think he's a pure like catch and shoot guy, off pick and pops or spot ups, nor do I think he's like a pure, just like off ball screen and dive or, cut finisher. Like, I do think he can give you some one-on-one scoring and playmaking. It's going to need some time and some more seasoning. And luckily, that's exactly what you're going to get from him this year with Met 92.
Yeah, that was all really, really good points to kind of put a bow on this Victor conversation. The only thing I would mention is I thought the left hand point was great, Brian, because I had forgotten to mention that, and I did make some notes about. There were a couple times, and it's a small thing, like there were a couple times where it's very clear to anybody that watched basketball, like, oh, you would have been much better off going with your left hand and finishing there. Yeah. He would almost try and come back towards the defense with his right hand on the left side sometimes. It's just like, you shouldn't do that, but it's workable. Like, he'll figure that out in time, but it's true.
And the fact that he has that ability to, block shots with his offhand.
With both, yeah.
It's like,
that's right.
It's maybe not the same sort of like body mechanics, but the fact that he is like, there's some obvious coordination and development with that offhand that, like, I'm certain he even if it never developed, he'd be fine because of his length. In like relative, I don't think he's like super explosive jumping, but pretty, more of like more like of a smooth jumper. But it is something that I'm sure he'll add, and it'll make him that much more diabolical in terms of like finishing around the cup.